And let's just start with what the concern here around safety. Why is it not safe for teachers to be back to school?
Well, we're having a huge issue reconciling the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic, one that has impacted millions of people around the world. Our death toll in the United States of America has reached six figures. We have more cops in our classrooms and our school buildings than we do school nurses. Um, the infrastructure just isn't here right now for the Chicago Public Schools to open up and keep people safe. Any plan that is being presented is a plan that only mitigates harm. It doesn't protect us from harm.
Yeah, New York City has drawn a line in the sand in terms of 3% being the infection rate at which it will reject in-school schooling. Have you taken decisions on specific details like that yet, Stacy? Is there a percentage, for example, for the Chicago Teachers Union beyond which there would be no going back to school for the teachers?
Well, it's 8% here in Chicago. Our mayor, who's in control of our school district, she has said 8%. We think that's too high. And accordingly, if you look at some of the zip codes, especially on the south side and the west side of our city, where many of our Black families reside, percentages are going as high as 12 and 11%, which exceed the 8%. That being said, we know that in a school district that is overwhelmingly Black, Latinx, and immigrant, that those are also the same populations of individuals who have been most impacted by COVID. We're just going to have to get to a place of making remote learning more accessible to all of our students, putting in the infrastructure and working with all stakeholders to make that better. Look, this is not ideal for anyone. This is a pandemic. Our job as adults in this moment is to keep people safe and most of all, to keep our children safe.
Yeah, safety. And then, of course, one of the pieces of irreparable damage that might be being done here is the loss of education to whole cohorts of young people, Stacy. So if what you'd like is online learning, should the attention and focus now be on how to deliver education in a way that is successful for everybody and that actually is equal for everybody? I mean, why not turn the attention there?
Well, a couple of things. One, the issues with disparities in education have been there. I feel like this is Groundhog's Day. Last July, I was saying the same thing in our lead up to our strike, that we needed smaller class sizes. We needed nurses, librarians, and social workers in our school communities. As a mother, I know how absolutely difficult this has been for families. And I know that this won't last always. I know that the adjustments that we are making in this moment need to have robust support from the grown-ups involved. So that means every single family in Chicago who has school-age children, they need devices. We should be talking about making broadband a utility, not just handing out hotspots to families. Look, where there is a will, there is a way. And what we are seeing in this moment is a lot of dithering on percentages that do not give parents like myself much confidence that they can keep our children safe.
Stacey, do you worry about the kids that, maybe won't have as easy access to lunches and so on if they don't get to go to school in person? As much as obviously you have to protect teachers' lives, right, and the lives of their students, how do you ensure that the most vulnerable in Chicago don't get hurt by decisions made?
Well, the Chicago Teachers Union has always been concerned about issues of equity and race. We have been on the floor, for the last decade, making it very clear that, defunding our communities and the way that it's been done over a generation, it is what is adding and compounding the inequities. So if we're talking about sending Black and brown children back into school communities that we know are unsafe, then we should also be talking about universal health care for those same Black and brown children. When we talk about making sure that they can participate in society, we also have to make sure that we are saying that their parents need living wage jobs. If we are clear about what is necessary in this moment, it's just not pushing students back into a classroom. It's universal basic income for families that have school-age children. It's also universal health care for all of us here in America, because this is a pandemic. It is tackling the unemployment
Yeah.
issue, which is 54% for Black men throughout this country. It is not just a narrow issue with respect to school. There are communities that have been disinvested in. It's the fact that rent will be due on August 1st, and Black people and brown people will be evicted from their homes.
Yes.
So this is one issue of many that we are
Stacey,
trying to work against.
Okay, and I just want to jump in and say every issue you've named is valid and important and enormous, and perhaps beyond the scope of a teachers' union. Many parents feel frustration to hear teachers' unions talking about class sizes and
let me be
adding
clear,
expenses.
it's not beyond our scope.
Not that those aren't worthy things, but can you pivot in a way that will educate kids in the fall remotely? Can we get that done?
Can we pivot in a way that makes sure that the kids who need to be educated also have shelter and food? Can we pivot in a way that puts families in a position to care for their children? Schools will not ameliorate the lack of a social safety net in our society. And because teachers are common good practitioners, we are going to raise our voices with parents who are also frontline workers, by the way. The workers that are in the grocery stores, the nursing homes, and the hospitals, those are our parents as well.
Yeah.
So we're not going to just lift up one narrow issue. We're going to lift up the issues that anchor the communities in which we teach.
Yes.
These are common good issues. We are going to bargain for the common good. We're going to fight for the common good. It's not a pivot, it's a reality.
Sure.
When you walk into school communities with children who do not have health care, and there's not a nurse, but there's a cop at the door.
Yeah.
All of these things matter. And if we care about the health, the safety, the education of our children, we care about all of those things.
Absolutely. Stacy, do you see any of those in authority trying to meet you halfway or trying to come up with some solutions? And if not, what do you think is the answer for something like the Chicago Teachers Union? Is strike action, for example, do you think that that would be effective in this instance?
Quite frankly, we think what would be effective is that those who are in charge of our local, our state, and our federal government figure out how to keep people safe. This pandemic has exposed the lack of a social safety net for Black people, brown people, poor people, immigrant people in this country. We would expect folks who ask for our vote, who pledge a lot of things to us every election, during the election time, we would expect them to rise to the occasion. Now, obviously, our ultimate weapon is a strike. We are sitting at the table currently with the Chicago Public Schools, and we are hoping that grown-ups can come to a conclusion that puts the health, the safety, the education of our children front and center.